I knew something was wrong the second Mark asked if we could talk privately. We'd been in the same friend group for years, but we'd never had that kind of conversation. Not without Jenna there. It was a Saturday night at Jenna's place, a casual get-together with a few people from work. She ducked into the kitchen to refill the chips, and suddenly, it was just me and him in the living room. He leaned forward like he was about to share some work gossip, but his voice dropped low. "I think about you sometimes," he said. "More than I should." I froze. For a split second, I thought maybe he was talking about asking my advice on a gift for Jenna or getting my opinion about a surprise trip. But his eyes made it clear this wasn't about anything wholesome. My stomach tightened. I told him it wasn't appropriate, that I wasn't interested, and that he needed to stop before he ruined things. He gave me this little smirk, like I was overreacting, and said, "Relax, I'm just being honest." Then Jenna came back in, smiling, holding a bowl of chips, completely unaware. I tried to keep my face neutral, but every interaction after that felt different. He laughed a little too loud at my jokes, lingered too close in the kitchen, and I kept catching myself wondering if I should tell her right away or wait until I'd figured out exactly how to say it. That night, when I finally left, my phone buzzed before I even got home. A text from him. "Don't make this into something it's not." That's when I realized he was already preparing his side of the story. I stared at that text for a long minute, hands tight on the steering wheel. It wasn't even midnight yet, but the roads were empty, just the hum of my car filling the silence. I wanted to fire back something sharp, but I also knew that whatever I wrote could end up screenshotted and shown to Jenna. That thought made my stomach sink. I decided not to respond at all. I figured silence would send its own message. The next morning, though, my phone lit up again, this time from Jenna. "Mark says you were acting weird last night. Everything okay?" My chest tightened. The fact that she was asking meant he'd already started twisting it. I told her I was just tired and maybe a little stressed from work. It was half true. I'd had a brutal week at the hospital, but it wasn't the whole truth. She didn't press, just sent back a quick heart emoji. That almost made it worse. At work, I kept replaying the conversation in my head. If I told her, I'd risk blowing up her relationship. If I didn't, I'd have to sit through more of his comments, maybe worse. The idea of seeing them together now made my skin crawl. But we'd been best friends since freshman year of high school. We'd been through breakups, job changes, family drama. The thought of her thinking I'd come on to him, it made my throat feel tight. 2 days later, I got my answer on whether keeping quiet would buy me time. Jenna texted again, only this time it was different. "Mark says you said something to him that made him uncomfortable. Can we talk?" I read her message 3 times, each pass making my jaw clench tighter. He'd flipped it completely. Not only was he lying, but he was framing me as the one who crossed the line. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard, but I forced myself to slow down. Anything I wrote in anger could be used against me later. I asked if she wanted to meet in person. She agreed, suggesting a coffee shop we both liked. When I got there, she was already seated, her iced latte untouched, arms crossed. She didn't smile when I sat down. "Mark told me you said you think about him," she said, her voice tight. "He said it caught him off guard." I couldn't help it. I laughed, but not because it was funny. That's exactly what he said to me, word for word. Only I told him it was inappropriate. I watched her eyes narrow, trying to read whether she believed me. She leaned back, arms still crossed. Why would he make that up? That question stung, but I kept my voice even. "I don't know, Jenna. Maybe because I shut him down, and he wants to control the narrative. Maybe because he knows if I tell you first, you'll see him differently." Her mouth tightened, and she looked away toward the window. We'd always had this unspoken trust. If one of us said something, the other believed it. Now, there was a gap between us I hadn't felt in 17 years. When we left, she said she needed a little space to think. It was polite on the surface, but her tone felt final. I walked to my car wondering if this was the start of losing her for good. The space Jenna asked for turned into radio silence. A week went by without so much as a text. I told myself she was just sorting through her feelings, but deep down I knew she was talking to him every day, hearing his version on repeat. That kind of repetition has a way of sinking in. On the 9th day, I saw her name pop up on my phone. For a second, I felt relief, but the message was short. I think it's best if we don't hang out for a while. No explanation. No question, no opening for a reply. I sat there staring at it, the weight of 17 years pressing down on me. The people at work noticed I was quieter. I didn't tell them why, partly because I didn't want to turn our personal mess into office gossip, and partly because I couldn't say it out loud without feeling my chest tighten. Nights were worse. I'd replay the living room scene over and over, wishing I had said something sharper, something that couldn't be twisted. Then one afternoon, I ran into a mutual friend, Lauren, at the grocery store. She gave me this careful look and said, I heard things are tense with you and Jenna. She said there was a misunderstanding with Mark. That word, misunderstanding, told me everything. It meant Jenna wasn't sure what to believe, but it also meant she wasn't shutting the door completely. If she was calling it a misunderstanding, she hadn't decided I was the villain. Not yet. Driving home, I realized I had a choice. I could wait and let Mark's version become the truth by default, or I could do something to make sure mine was heard. I just didn't know which move would cost me less. I didn't have to wait long for the decision to be made for me. 2 days later, Lauren called. Look, I don't want to get in the middle, she started, but Mark's been talking a lot. He's telling people you came on to him and that you're embarrassed, so you're making him the bad guy. Hearing it secondhand was worse than hearing it from him. It meant his version was out there, multiplying. Every person who heard it would add their own slant when they passed it along. By the time it reached someone else I cared about, it would be a completely different story. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, typing out everything that had happened, every word, every tone, the exact order. I didn't send it yet, but writing it down made it feel less slippery in my head. At least I had my version set in stone. The next morning, I called Jenna. She didn't answer. I left a voicemail, keeping my voice calm, telling her I needed to clear the air in person. No accusations, no defensiveness, just the truth. I didn't hear back. By the end of the week, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going to let him control the story. If Jenna was going to walk away from our friendship, it was going to be with both sides laid out, not just his. When I finally saw her name flash across my screen again, it wasn't a text. It was an invitation, her birthday dinner, which meant I'd have to see both of them, sitting side by side, pretending nothing was wrong. I almost didn't go. The idea of sitting across from Mark, watching him play the charming boyfriend, made my stomach knot. But skipping would hand him another talking point. See, she's avoiding us because she's guilty. So I RSVP'd yes. The dinner was at a small Italian place downtown, the kind of spot with dim lighting and too many framed photos of Venice on the walls. I arrived a few minutes early, hoping to grab a seat far from him, but the table was already arranged. My place card was directly across from theirs. When Jenna walked in, she gave me a quick hug, polite but stiff. Mark followed, grinning like we were all old friends. Throughout the meal, he made little comments only I would catch, half smirks when Jenna wasn't looking, lingering glances whenever I spoke. It wasn't enough for anyone else to notice, but it was enough to make my pulse spike. I kept my focus on the other guests, laughing at their stories, asking questions, making sure I looked like I was having a good time. If Mark wanted me flustered, I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction. Toward the end of the night, Jenna leaned over and asked if I could help her carry her gifts to the car. Outside, away from the noise, she finally looked me in the eye. I don't know who to believe, she said quietly. You're both saying the exact same thing. Just flip. I took a breath. Then believe the version that doesn't require you to think I betray you after 17 years. She didn't answer right away, just nodded slowly, like she was filing it away for later. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a tiny shift, like the ground between us might not be gone completely. The shift was small, but it was enough to give me some hope. I didn't push her after that night. Instead, I gave her the space she'd asked for weeks earlier, figuring my silence might speak louder than any defense. If Mark kept talking, maybe his overplaying would start to show. About a week later, Lauren texted me again. You might want to know, Mark was running his mouth at the bar last night. He said you've been obsessed with him for years. That did it. His story was getting bolder, and the longer I stayed quiet, the more it seemed like I had something to hide. So I made a plan, not to ambush him, but to put myself where I knew he'd have to act in the open. Our mutual friends organized a Sunday barbecue at a local park, and both he and Jenna were going. I decided I'd be there too, calm, unbothered, and ready if he tried anything. The day of the barbecue, the Texas heat was relentless. I brought a cooler and a stack of paper plates, blending right in with the rest of the crowd. Mark showed up late, sunglasses on, carrying nothing but a six-pack. He greeted everyone like he was the life of the party, but I caught the flicker in his expression when he saw me. For most of the afternoon, he kept his distance. Then, while I was at the drink table alone, he walked up behind me. "Still pretending you don't want this to get ugly?" he murmured, just low enough that no one else could hear. I didn't turn around. "Keep talking, Mark. The more you do, the easier it'll be for people to see who you really are." His smirk faltered. For the first time, I felt like the control was starting to slip out of his hands. After the barbecue, things started shifting in ways I hadn't expected. A couple of mutual friends reached out, casually asking about what really happened with Mark. I kept my answers short and consistent. No extra details for him to twist. The less I fed the rumor mill, the less material he had. Then one afternoon, Jenna called. Not a text, not a voicemail, a real call. "Can we meet? Just us," she said. Her tone wasn't cold, but it wasn't warm either. We met at a park halfway between our places, the same one we used to walk in during nursing school break. She got straight to it. "I've been paying attention," she said. "Mark's stories keep changing. Yours hasn't." I didn't say anything right away. I could tell she wasn't done. She looked tired, shoulders slumped, eyes shadowed. "And the way he talks about you when you're not around, it's not how someone talks about their girlfriend's best friend." There it was, the thing I'd been waiting for, not from my mouth but hers. "I should have trusted you," she admitted. "I wanted to believe him because it was easier than admitting he might be the kind of guy who'd lie to me." I didn't tell her I'd almost given up. I didn't say how much it had hurt that she'd even considered his version. I just told her I appreciated her listening now. We walked a couple more laps around the park, talking about lighter things. But I knew, and I think she did too, that the friendship we'd had before was never coming back exactly the same. Still, maybe we could build something close to it. And as for Mark, I had no illusion. This wasn't over. Not yet. Over the next week, Jenna started pulling back from Mark. I could see it in little ways. She stopped bringing him to group plans, stopped posting pictures with him, and when his name came up, she'd changed the subject. I didn't ask for details. I figured if she wanted to talk about it, she would. Then, one Friday night, she showed up at my apartment unannounced. She was holding a small box. "His stuff," she said flatly when I opened the door. I stepped aside, and she set it on the kitchen counter like it weighed nothing. "We're done." She didn't want to go into every reason, but I could tell the break wasn't about one single thing. It was a slow accumulation. His shifting stories, his little digs at me, and, I suspected, other red flags she hadn't shared. "I'm sorry it took me this long," she said. "You don't have to apologize." I told her, and I meant it. We'd both learned things we hadn't wanted to see, and that kind of truth doesn't land easy. The following week, Mark tried once more to get in touch. A single text, "Guess you're proud of yourself." I deleted it without responding. There was nothing left to say. Jenna and I started hanging out again, carefully at first, like we were testing the strength of a bridge that had been rebuilt. Some days felt almost normal. Other days, I'd remember the way she looked at me in that coffee shop, uncertain, and it would sting all over again. But I could feel the balance shifting back toward me. The story he tried to write was unraveling, and for once, I wasn't the one scrambling to defend myself. A month later, the dust had mostly settled. Jenna and I weren't exactly like before, but we'd found a new rhythm, one with clearer boundaries and less assumption that either of us would blindly believe someone else's version. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. Mark, on the other hand, had faded into the background. I'd hear bits and pieces through mutual friends, how he tried dating again, how those ended quickly. Apparently, the charm he leaned on so heavily didn't hold up well under scrutiny. People had started noticing the cracks I'd seen from the start. One night, sitting on Jenna's porch with iced tea in hand, she said, "You know, I almost let him convince me you were the problem. I'm glad I caught on when I did." "Me too," I said. I didn't need to rub it in or dissect it any further. What mattered was that I hadn't betrayed myself trying to keep the peace. I'd stayed consistent, told the truth, and let time do the work. It wasn't the kind of ending where everything gets tied up neatly. Some friendships don't come out stronger. They just survive in a new form. That was enough for me. I'd learned that sometimes protecting your name isn't about fighting every accusation head-on. It's about standing so firmly in your truth that the lies collapse under their own weight. And even if a friendship changes in the process, at least you can look in the mirror and know you didn't lose yourself to keep it.